Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Rocky Top Insider Diamond Pass here on this Wednesday, April 2nd edition, coming at you here on the 2nd of the month. A beautiful day in Knoxville. It's a great day to have a great day. I'm your host, Jack Foster, joined alongside Ryan Shumpert. As always, coming at you a little later in the week, but plenty to discuss regarding Tennessee baseball as they swept South Carolina, beat Tennessee Tech in a midweek. Going to do a little bit more of a big picture discussion today rather than just recapping the series. A&M is right around the corner as well. But before we get into it, Ryan, how you doing?
Doing well. Like you said, a beautiful day. It's supposed to get real warm this week, bordering on hot even. So basketball season's over. It now officially feels like spring. And excited to get to be able to watch more baseball, be at more baseball games. And yeah, I mean the Tennessee Tech game on Tuesday night, Tennessee, big win. They improved to 2-2 over the last 4 years over the mighty Golden Eagles.
Yeah.
A game that they played pretty well in despite not having like a huge offensive performance.
Yeah, really some dominant wins last 2 years. I think they run ruled Tech last year, 11-1 and 7. And then, last night was honestly one of the most, I don't want to call it boring. It was a good game, but just uneventful games of the season. Like, there's just very little take. I mean, AJ Russell returning, of course, but, beyond that, there's really nothing happened of note.
No, not really. I mean, they were up 5. They scored 2, and Tennessee scored 2 in the first, 2 in the second, 1 in the third, and was up 5-0. And I was like, okay, they're just going to annihilate them. And then didn't really do anything the rest of the game until Chris Newstrom hit a 2-run homer, which that was in the 7th inning, I believe, pretty late in the game. So,
Yep.
Blake Grimmer completes being continues to be a Tuesday menace, and Bargo stayed hot, and, some solid outings from the pitching staff. But even there, Tony, you could tell, was planning that the run rule was going to happen because he was throwing guys for less than an inning, trying to get as many guys work as possible. So it wasn't, to your point, it wasn't really like outside of AJ pitching that there was really a ton of takeaways from the pitching staff.
Yeah, not often you use 10 plus pitchers and the game go full 9 in a midweek and it lasts less than 3 hours. So it
Yeah,
was
it's true.
honestly a pretty efficient game given and Tech. I mean, I guess it wasn't a ton of inning pitching changes. It usually was just a new guy every inning for each side, but there were a couple. But efficient game. Tennessee gets the win. Yeah. So today, 3 big questions for Tennessee baseball. For 27-2. 8-1 in league play, 2 SEC series sweeps under their belt. Of course, took 2 of 3 at Alabama, 5-1 on the road. Really impressive team, number 1 in the country, all that. But 3 big questions for Tennessee heading into this Texas A&M series and just here in April. Ryan will start with the AJ Russell news. And given that he returned to action last night, his first action since February 25th when he started against North Alabama, just pitched 1 inning yet again. So 2 innings under his belt on the season. Of course, no setback happened for Russell against North Alabama back over a month ago, but Tennessee chose to exercise caution and didn't want to ramp up his action until April. Well, now it's April. He gets the midweek start, works around a 2-out single, I believe, looked really good. Pair of strikeouts, fastball sitting around 95, so you can tell they weren't pushing anything. And then he said after the game that the next appearance for him, hopefully 2 innings, but Ryan, the important thing to note with AJ Russell is that it's going to be a minute before, he obviously gets ramped up to, 60, 70 plus pitches.
Yeah, for sure. As it would be with really anybody who's starting to throw in games for the first time in a minute, and it presents it's just an interesting situation of how Tennessee handles them, how Tennessee uses them. They really can't. I mean, they really could use. They need another weekend arm that they trust. Really, on that note, I mean, Braden Grinzel's kind of saved them has probably been dramatic the last 2 weekends, but what he's been able to do has really been pretty remarkable and highly significant for Tennessee. So expect to see more of Russell soon. What exactly that looks like, when exactly we see him, up in the air, but a good step in the right direction. You mentioned really just a seeing eye single, found a hole in the infield. I think he threw 11 strikes on 12 pitches, mostly the fastball. Said he didn't like the slider command a ton, and he went and threw some, as we saw, went and threw some in the bullpen after he was done. And I think it was Tony said, not AJ himself, that he was working on the slider there some. So a good first outing for him back, and now kind of all eyes on what does it look like for him moving forward.
Yeah, and that is the first of our three questions here today is what should Russell's role be on the Tennessee pitching staff moving forward? This is a starter by nature. AJ Russell is a starting pitcher, and he's definitely one of the most talented arms on Tennessee staff. But you look at the weekend rotation now, and I think we can confidently refer to Tennessee as having a weekend rotation at this point. Tegan Kuhns with consecutive SEC starts under his belt, is going 4+ innings last couple of times out. So he's Tennessee's Sunday guy. And I think you heard Tony Vitello say last night, TBA, maybe the quote TBA, which is to be
Yeah.
announced starter on Sunday, probably thrown out the window this weekend. I would expect Tegan Kuhns to just be Tennessee's Sunday guy as announced. So when you look at Liam Doyle, who is, not been perfect the last two times out, of course, and Marcus Phillips, who I think has been really great, and Tegan Kuhns, who has been awesome the last two times out. What should AJ Russell's role be here moving forward? Do you foresee it being more of a bullpen role, or do you think that he can actually become part of this weekend rotation before the regular season ends?
Man, it's such a tough question. Like, yes, I do think he can be part of the weekend rotation. I think he could be the Sunday starter. That would not surprise me if he claims that role. But it's just the dynamics of what that would look like to me that's so intriguing, confusing. Because just to what you said earlier, Jack, like he's not gonna be ready to throw even let's say next weekend against Ole Miss, not this coming weekend against A&M. He's not going to be ready to throw 4 or 5 innings by then. I don't think. So when you start mixing him in, stop my rambling and try to be a little more cohesive at this point. My thought is if he's going to be a weekend starter when he first throws an SEC play, it probably needs to be in a starting role. Now, for it to be in a starting role, it's probably going to be an opener role. Does Tennessee feel comfortable doing that? Do they feel comfortable saying, all right, we're going to throw AJ Russell for 2 innings on Sunday against Ole Miss or whenever that would be? I'm not sure. But I do think if he's going to be a starter, which I do think is probably what gives Tennessee the highest ceiling, I'm not sure you throw him into the bullpen in SEC play and then make that change. I think you, from the jump, put him
Hmm.
into a starting spot as an opener.
And that would be at the expense of Coons. Coons would go to the bullpen, potentially piggyback Russell on a Sunday.
Yeah, I think it would definitely to start. He would be picking backing Russell because of just what I said. Russell would be more of an opener.
Yeah.
Um, but I think if you're ideally for Tennessee, I think you're thinking long run. That's not necessarily his role as a piggyback. You just use him as 1A, 1B with Nate Snead as your best bullpen arms. And I mean, Tanner Franklin has been very inconsistent for Tennessee out of the bullpen. So I think you could say, all right, Tegan Kuhns, you're going to get the ball on Friday after Liam Doyle, or if we're going to go to Nate Snead, you're going to be the first guy on Saturday. Like, I think, in the forefront, he probably would be a stack with Russell because you'd want someone that could throw four or 5 innings after him if he's just going to be an opener. But in the
Yeah.
long run, I think you use him aggressively over the course of the weekend as one of your best if not your best bullpen arm.
Okay. No, I mean it obviously works. Like Coons is a guy who can do both. Tennessee has multiple of those guys. Snead's a guy who can do both. Russell was out of the bullpen his true freshman year. He can do both. But you're right. The high ceiling is that Russell starts. And I think it would be the correct decision. But man, Coons has been great the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, he makes
And
it tough.
he is just so fun to watch. And it's still like he's gotten more trust. You could tell over the last couple of weeks. Like Tony will let him go longer, but still, at the sign of the earliest adversity, Coons is pulled. Like 2 singles in the fifth, gone. Like no, there's Coons hasn't. I mean, he did in a midweek once, but in SEC action, he hasn't gotten himself in a jam and then worked himself out of it because he's been pulled
Yeah.
anytime there's been a sign of things going awry at all. And Braden Krenzel has been awesome out of relief. I mean, he has just been what a surprise the last two times out. And Tony let him go the ninth this last Sunday, so he pitched a full 5 after Coons, worked himself out of a bases loaded jam earlier and at the beginning of his outing. So Krenzel has been great. The true freshman duo eating all 27 outs on the road in SEC play. I mean, that in itself is so impressive.
Yeah.
Um, that to me, that's why this is such a huge question. Because look what Coons and Krenzel have been doing on Sundays. And if Russell's going to take that role, how does that shift things up given how it's worked the last 2 weeks? But, I think it's just, you know, Tegan Coons is going to be happy having any role on Tennessee staff and any important role that is. But it really does feel like it's inevitable that Russell is going to be a part of this weekend rotation and probably within a month, I'd say.
Yeah, but that's the thing I would say is it doesn't necessarily feel inevitable to me. That's what I would do. I think that's most likely, but I mean, kind of to the point you were just making, like Tegan Coons has, I mean, a great case to keep it, and to stay in that role and not to rock the boat. I mean, Tennessee's 8-1 in SEC play. We'll see what they do this weekend. I expect them to have a successful weekend at home against A&M. And you said it. I mean, Russell is a starter, but he came out of the bullpen as a freshman. Like, I don't think he. And you listen to him talk, he sounds like someone, and I'm sure I mean, all these guys want to be weekend starters. I'm sure he wants to be, but you listen to him talk, I just want to get out there and pitch,
Mhm.
and pitch as much as possible. So I don't think he would be a headache by any means, and that's just not AJ Russell's personality either. I think he'll do whatever's best for the team. So while I do think that it's will be Russell long term, and that's what I would do. Like, I don't know, I'm not sure really either of the options here would surprise me if Tennessee goes in those directions, just because of how good Coons has been.
Yeah. And I mean, the the amount of talent you'd have in that bullpen with Russell in there. And, I mean, Franklin, who's been inconsistent, could still pump triple digits. Russell, once he gets ramped up, can get up there. And of course, Snead. I mean, you'd have so many good right-handed bullpen options there. Embarrassment of riches, and then Loy to be your do-it-all guy. And if Krenzel can continue, it's a good problem to have, but definitely going to be something to monitor moving forward, and how Russell continues his progression. So, moving to our second big question here, a really big development for Tennessee as of late has been Ariel Antigua playing really well with extra opportunities. He started the last 6 games, I believe, at shortstop. Of course, Gavin Kilen has been sidelined with a hamstring injury, has not been in the starting lineup since the TSU game in which he got injured, has only made one appearance. It was a pinch hit at bat at South Carolina in game 2. He quickly grounded out. So, Gavin Keelan, I think we'll probably see the field this weekend against Texas A&M. I would imagine he maybe pinch hits in the opener or something like that, or maybe starts at DH right out of the gate, but could probably anticipate a DH start for Gavin Keelan this weekend. I think that's safe to say. But the question here, Ryan, is when Gavin Keelan comes back to 100% and is back starting second base, all systems go with him. Has Ariel Antigua solidified himself as Tennessee's starting shortstop no matter what? Because he has saved Tennessee on multiple occasions defensively. I mean, his plays on defense in game 2 of the South Carolina series were unbelievable. I mean, the 3 homers in that game technically won them the game. That's how they scored all of their 7 runs. But my goodness, did Ariel make some huge plays late defensively. And he's been solid enough at the plate. I know that we talked last week about how he had that 3-hit day at Alabama. It wasn't quite as great at South Carolina, but he did have a couple of hits. He had a big 2-run single. He actually led Tennessee in RBIs in game 1 of the series. So he hasn't been lifeless at the plate. He's giving them something, which I think is kind of all you need out of a 9-hole hitter who is just unbelievably amazing on defense. So the question here, Ryan, I know you haven't watched a ton of, or you didn't watch a ton of the SC series really, but do you see a path where Ariel Antigua starts no matter what when Keelan comes back?
Yeah, I think the first game that Gavin Keelan starts at second base, like Ariel will be the guy at shortstop, and Manny Marine will be the one that kind of gets bumped from the equation. I think Antigua has done enough. I mean, you said it with what he's been at the plate, which hasn't been spectacular, but it's been solid, which I think was a question mark of whether he could be solid offensively. And then, I think Tony Vitello talked about it maybe with Reese Chapman last night, but he looped Ariel in there. Someone passage is just good defensively, but can change the game defensively. And I think it's hard to say Ariel doesn't do that. I mean, just how good he is on that at shortstop, and really anywhere you put him in the infield whenever he plays. But shortstop obviously the most important spot. So yeah, I think so. I'm not sure that it's just a hard and fast every game thing.
Hmm.
But I would say that, like, for a lot of guys, because of just Tennessee's depth, I think they'll continue to rotate some and get other guys opportunities. And I don't think this just means, all right, it's kind of, it's over for Manny. He's not going to start again in SEC play when Kilen comes back and Ariel, like we're saying, things stays it short. But I do think to start, it's going to be Ariel still at shortstop, and we'll see what a rotation could potentially look like.
And it helps Ariel's case that Manny hasn't been setting the world on fire at the plate either. He's been really solid all year, but it's not like he's just hitting 400 every week, and you just can't take him out or anything like that. And also, Manny has made some mistakes at second. He was really smooth at third all year, but he's made some tough mistakes at second base the last couple of weeks. I don't know why that is, but whether it's booting a grounder to prevent a double play, dropping a line drive that allows to run score, like there's been some big mistakes he's made. So I think that helps Ariel as well to, not take him out. But the infield of Andrew Fisher at first, Gavin Keelan at second, Ariel Antigua at short, and Dean Curley at third to me is the best defensive infield you can have for Tennessee right now. And it's good enough offensively, of course, three studs and then Ariel. But, that to me maximizes the most for Tennessee. And that's the best uh, quartet, if you will, of starters to have.
Yeah, for sure defensively, and I do think there's an element of importance to that because of Andrew Fisher at first.
Who's been
Not that
great.
he's just yeah, not that he's like terrible at first base or anything, but um, it's a guy that's inexperienced there. His does not have a ton of reps, so making it as easy as possible for him, I think there's a real benefit for. And to your point, he's been really good. You would never think if you're watching it, all right, this is a guy that's really never played first base before, or at least at the college level.
Mm,
So I think that's a real benefit to it. To your point about Manny's hitting, I think, and Manny has a good number of more plate appearances, but um, Ariel's on base percentage in SEC play is 364. Manny's is 361. The pop has been basically the same. No home runs for either, one double for each. So hitting
yeah.
wise, they've basically been about the same. And I do wonder if Mario or if Manny would be fine. Going back to third, like you mentioned, his issues have come at second specifically. I wonder how big of a knock that is against him, given that's not what he's going to play when Keelan comes back. But to this point, the hitting's kind of all been the same in small sample size in SEC play, but the hitting's all been the same. And even with Manny being overall a good defender, Ariel's just a lead. So the tiebreaker definitely goes to him.
Yeah. And also, important point that I wanted to make here is that, Tennessee can hit homers really well. Like, they're a home run team. They still have that identity to them. But there's no question that this offense is not as good as last year's. And of course, it's not going to be. Last year's was amazing. No need to really get into comparisons. But I think Tennessee's just a little bit different of a team this year. Pitching staff is better. They're going to be in closer games, I think. And therefore, you got to be a little bit more reliant on defense. And you saw it Saturday. Like Tennessee still had 3 homers that were huge, but outside of that, the contact hitting for Tennessee this year hasn't been great. Like they've had a couple of innings. I think back to when they singled an Alabama starter to death last week. They can still do it. They're still a really good hitting team, but it does feel like they're a bit more reliant on the home run ball this year. So in these close games, potentially low scoring games, defense is more important to me for Tennessee, and that also, would go all signs pointing to Ariel starting more as well. So it just feels like a little bit of a different Tennessee team this year, where really reliant on a great pitching staff and potentially some really strong defense. I mean, you see great throws from Jay and Reese in the outfield. Like
Yeah.
this team has some really great defensive players, and I think that can be a major plus for this team in SEC play.
No, I think those are great points. We how many times in Tony's tenure have we seen him opt for defense over offense? It's really not much, but I think you are seeing that more this season, and it does make sense just because of the way, like you said, Tennessee's going to play. Like I agree that they're more home run dependent this year. Like the 22 and 24 teams, there was always that they hit so many home runs that people acted like they were home run dependent, and it was all
Right.
the conversation about the small stadium, and
Yeah.
obviously 22 team never made it to Omaha, but mashed the ball in an even bigger park in Hoover, and 24 did too, where I was just like, this is silly. These teams just a really, really good hitting team. This team, where I think the 21 team was kind of like this too, I think you kind of do wonder about what a potential weekend in Omaha would look like, because it is a little more home run dependent, and that averages as a whole for the team aren't as high. So it's just, I think you've seen Tony Vitello approach it a little bit differently. I mean, you have honestly, truly two contact hitters, and Jay Abernathy and Ariel Antigua in there right now, which you just don't see much from Tennessee. Two guys that aren't going to probably hit 5 home runs on the season. I mean, it feels like the floor for anyone that would start at Tennessee the last handful of years is like 8,
Yeah.
or flirting with 10 at least, and that's not the case for those guys. So it will be interesting to see, and I think you're right. It makes some sense to lean into, with guys in the back of the lineup, lean into playing good defense behind what is a good pitching staff, and just try to win more in the margins. And certainly Tennessee does have a number of bats at the top of the lineup that can mash the ball in, or is very, very good. But maybe not quite that 1-9 that they've had it in the past.
Yeah. I mean, Blake Burke had 30 doubles last year. So it's like
Yeah.
they
Sheesh.
were, I mean, you're averaging a double every other game from him. And, him hitting at the top of the lineup like that was just so clutch. But yeah, we'll see how it fares out, but that's just my hunch right now is that this team is a bit more reliant on home runs. Specifically, you look at guys like Andrew Fisher, who his homers have been just unbelievably huge, and he's been great in that department. But it does feel like him, Reese Chapman, just you got some guys who can hit home runs a lot, but maybe are a bit more reliant on that than some of the other stars in years past, which is fine when you have a great defense like Tennessee has when Ariel's out there, and of course the elite pitching staff Tennessee has.
I would push back a little bit on Fisher just because he walks so much. Like,
Okay, fair. Right.
you're right
He
from
does
like,
walk a
it
ton.
doesn't feel like he hits a ton of doubles and even a ton of singles. But
He
I mean,
gets
it
on
just
base.
feels like he gets
Yeah.
on base. Yeah, it feels like he has a great command of the strike zone, and takes a lot of walks and punishes a lot of. I mean, I was following the game. Was it on Sunday? Did he hit? I think it was on Sunday. Did he hit the home run pretty early in the game on a 3-0
Mhm.
pitch? I was just following the game on a stat broadcast, so I wasn't watching, but while at basketball, but was just kind of keeping up with what was happening, and saw him hit the home run, and just saw that it was on a 3-0 pitch, and I was like, I am so excited to see the swing that Andrew Fisher put on this 3-0 ball, because when he gets ahead in the count and he gets stuff over the plate, he is violent swinging the baseball bat, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, and also Saturday, I think Cannon Peebles' homer got a lot of the buzz, rightfully so. It was the go-ahead homer in the ninth, but man, Andrew Fisher's homer to give Tennessee the lead at the point was just
Yeah,
huge. 2 outs, full count, I believe it was. Um, yeah, that was a massive moment. It really felt like Tennessee was going to lose that game. And when Andrew Fisher hit that homer, I was like, okay, I think Tennessee's in a good spot now. Got the lead. Of course, South Carolina tied it, but at that point, it really felt like Tennessee was in the driver's seat after that homer, and that was a huge, just pressure packed moment for Andrew Fisher, and he delivered. He's got that
yeah.
gear, I think, that a lot of Tennessee baseball players have had in years past, but he's got that swagger, he's got that moxie, he's got that clutch gene, I think. And it may be the best clutch gene of the lineup. Time will tell, but he's certainly got it. So, speaking of the lineup, shifting gears to our third big question, it's not as much of a big question. I think the answer is a little more clear on this side of things, but definitely want to talk about it with you, Ryan. Talk about someone who has been raking. That is Dalton Bargo. He has been tremendous at the plate in the past couple of SEC weekends against South Carolina. He hit 500 on the weekend, started all 3 games, added a homer to his season, and he's just been just really good. Talk about not being reliant on a homer. Dalton Bargo is just hitting. He's racking up the hits. I sent you the note last night. He's on an 8-game hit streak right now, including the Tennessee Tech game. Multiple hits in 6 of those
Yeah.
8 games. Just an absolute great stretch for Bargo, and he hit second, I believe, at least 2, maybe all 3 games in the South Carolina series. Can't quite remember, but he's been hitting towards the top of the order as well. So the question is Dalton Bargo definitely an everyday player moving forward? We know that The start of the season was slow. He was in this DH competition, lost it at the beginning to Levi Clark, who started a ton of games. Now that Clark's in a slump, Bargo's raking. Feels like Bargo's at the top of that discussion and also can, of course, start in left or third anytime you want him to. But is Bargo, no doubt about it, everyday player right now?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know how you could, take his bat out of the lineup at this point. I mean, there's probably he's in the upper echelon of Tennessee hitters in SEC play with how good he's been. And it's just so steady, it feels like right now, and so consistent. And you said it, it's not home run. I mean, he's hit some home runs, but it just feels like he's spraying the ball. He's hitting the ball hard consistently. I don't know how you take him out of the lineup at this point. You probably kind of like I said with Ariel Manny, like I think it's probably possible that some other guys will get opportunities mixed in there too, and Bargo might have some days where he's not in the starting lineup. But I think for the most part, he's grabbed that DH job, and it's going to be hard for anyone else to wrestle it away from him.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. There's no way you can take him out. And to me, the question is, Levi Clark kind of has hit a wall, and he was so great, and everyone was so excited about what he can be this year. And, that's largely gone away, but I don't think it should go away completely. Levi Clark is still very talented and he can probably turn it around. Um, and he showed that he can be among Tennessee's top hitters when he's on. So, say Levi Clark turns things around and he gets back into a rhythm, and you got the infield is the infield like we put it earlier with Ariel at short, Dean at third. Um, so the question is, if you ever want to start Levi, it'll come at the expense. He'll have to start at the DH spot because he's not
Yeah.
going to start at catcher in an SEC game or at first. So he's going to DH if he's ever starting. Center and right are, who's starting there. So that means that if Bargo is going to be an everyday player, he would shift to left, and that Jay Abernathy would be the odd man out, or that Bargo would just not start and Clark would be the DH. I think the former is more likely at this point, meaning that Dalton Bargo is more of an everyday player than Jay Abernathy in my eyes. So even if Levi Clark works himself back into the fold for one game a weekend, something like that, every other weekend thing, he gets a DH start, or even say, Tony wants to give Manny a DH start. Who knows what could happen down the road? But I think as of right now, Dalton Bargo is definitely an everyday guy at DH. But then if Tony wants to put Clark or someone else in that spot, give them a chance, then that Bargo would just move to left. Like, that's how confident I am Bargo is an everyday guy and one of Tennessee's nine, no matter what.
Well, we'll get that tested. I think possibly, maybe even this weekend because of what Tony said. Kilen could come back, and I can't remember exactly how he phrased it. Let's see. I have transcript pulled up. The thing for us is to get Gavin in the lineup, and then probably next would be different. I don't know if it will come together. So that, I mean, to me, I read that as he's probably going to start DH before he starts second base.
Yeah,
So if
that's
that
right.
happens, I mean, how do they move it? Does Bargo could be now? Granted, they can play Bargo at third and Curley at shortstop, and Ariel could get knocked out, or Jay. It could go, if either one of those, but
Mm-hmm.
that could get tested shortly. And I think in the short term, I have that same conviction. You have that. Like, again, like just in the next week, like how are you going to take Barco out of the lineup when he's hitting so well? I think in the long run, and with the depth Tennessee has, I just think you're going to see them play trends maybe more than they have in the
Right.
past, just because they have so many options. And again, while maybe 5 or 6 guys are so solidified, and it's probably more than that. 6 or 7 guys are so solidified. It does feel like at the bottom, guys have been a bit streaky, and you
Yep.
have the bottom three. I mean, I'm not thinking this out, everybody, but the bottom three and then like your top 2 or 3 guys on the bench, like it feels like that gap relatively is pretty close. So, agree that you for sure. I don't see how you can take Bargo out of the lineup right now, but long term, like yeah, I mean, I could see a world where he's struggling and somebody else is getting the nod over him for a weekend or 2 weeks or something like that as Tennessee kind of continues to. I don't think it's going to be set in stone, I guess is what I'm saying, the entire year where it's just you come like last year, like 24, you came to the line or 22, excuse me, you came to the ballpark every day and you knew basically exactly what the lineup is going to look like. I don't
Yeah.
think that's ever going to be the case this year.
No, that's a fair point. And yeah, I mean, we've seen Bargo struggle, so it definitely can happen again. But right now, and I think at least he's bought himself even a little bit of a stretch if he does struggle
Definitely.
too, right? Like,
Yeah.
say he goes 180 at the plate this week or something like that this weekend. I still think he's in the lineup next weekend too. If the games start to compound for him, then you could see a switch. But yeah, no, right now, everyday guy. And you're right. I think we will see it tested. I said at the top of the podcast, Gavin Keelan's probably going to get a DH start this weekend based on Tony's tone. And I definitely think he gets ABs. And I would feel confident saying he gets a DH start. We'll see. But when that happens, what happens? Is it Ariel to the bench or is it Jay to the bench? Because I don't think Bargo's going to the bench. So that'll be
I
interesting.
agree. Yeah, it will be. And I even think on his weekly hit with John Wilkerson and Vince Ferrara on the radio on Monday, Tony said that like something to the extent of he expected Gavin to get in at bat on Tuesday at least too. So obviously that didn't happen, but
Mm-hmm.
just it feels like things are speeding up for him this week, even though he just got one at bat last week and it didn't get any at bats on Tuesday. But like you said, I think we're going to see him in a bigger role this weekend against the Aggies.
Yep. All right. Well, those are the three big questions I had for today's pod. Shorter one today, but just want to go over a couple of extra notes from the South Carolina series, just trends we're seeing as well. I'll start with Hunter Ensley, who Bargo's been raking, but so has Hunter Ensley. He's on a 9-game hit streak, multiple hits in 5 of those, had a 4-hit day, his third career 4-hit day in the series finale at South Carolina. Also added 2 homers to his season total in Columbia. So, we know what Hunter Ensley is. There's not really big storyline here or anything like that, but just recognizing how great Hunter Ensley has been and what a force he's been in that 3-hole for Tennessee. And also, if you recall back to the beginning of the year, it's like, is Hunter Ensley really going to be a 3-hole hitter for Tennessee? And then, maybe didn't have the hottest start to the season. Now it's like, okay, yeah, Ensley's just been one of Tennessee's best bat, arguably the most consistent. And he's, like I said, been a force in that 3-hole.
Yeah, no doubt. Like you said the thing earlier about maybe Fisher being the most clutch hitter for Tennessee this season, and you're right, time will tell. My bet's still Hunter Ensley, man. It feels
Uh,
like every big moment he comes through.
it's like they're different. Like if you need a 2-run double to take the lead, Hunter Ensley's your guy. I
Yeah,
think if you need a homer in a big spot, like you're
yeah,
down 1, 2 outs, bottom of the ninth, no one on, you need a solo
yeah.
homer, like Andrew
Fair.
Fisher. I think it's a little different, but yeah,
Yeah,
Fisher
you're right.
power clutch, if you will, and then Ensley just clutch overall because you're right. He's big game Hunter.
Big game hunter. That's right. So, yeah, no, he's been fantastic. I think, and look, I was one of the people asking the question of whether he would stay in the 3-hole long term. I think he's 1,000% grabbed that role, and that's testament to just how much he's been able to sustain his success this season. And again, I think I said this maybe last pod or a couple ago, where he was so unbelievable the last 6 weeks of the season last year, and he was just doing remarkable things.
Mm.
I think it's almost, and it was obviously incredibly impressive. Tennessee won a national championship in part because of it. But it's been cool this year to see. It's not quite the same. Like the power numbers aren't as gaudy, but he's been still so effective, so productive for Tennessee in the middle of the lineup. Less home runs, but hitting a ton of doubles for this team.
11
And
on the
it's
year.
yeah, it's been incredibly valuable and cool to watch the evolution and the consistency he's been able to put together so far this season.
Yeah, like I said, 11 doubles. Next closest is Chapman with 7. So he leads Tennessee by 4. 4 homers on the year. That'll probably creep up. But yeah, just 33 RBIs. That's tied for the team lead with Chapman. Hunter Ensley and Reese Chapman co-leading Tennessee in RBIs. Of course, they're further down the lineup, so more opportunities. But, 3 weekends through SEC play, I don't know if people would have had that. Like Ensley and Chapman
No,
co-leading Tennessee in RBIs. Pretty good seasons. And, Chapman too. I mentioned Ensley and Bargo. Chapman's been really solid. I don't think, you should take that for granted either. Hit for the cycle actually in the South Carolina weekend, had a triple double, homer, of course, a single. And he's been really solid. Yeah. So last thing I wanted to talk about here was just Dean Curley leading off. And, he hasn't set the world on fire by any means. He's had some really big hits, I think, for Tennessee this year. You go back to the homer in Alabama, the bases clearing double. I think it was a
yep,
double against
double
Florida.
Florida.
So he's had some big moments, but the consistency hasn't been there as good as some other players in the lineup. So I've seen the question raised by folks on Twitter and stuff, and you don't want to read too much into that stuff, but I have seen it quite a bit. Like, should Dean Curley be the leadoff guy for Tennessee, or should he be further down the lineup? And I don't really know if he's not really your typical leadoff hitter, I don't think. But the reason I think that Curley is the best option. To me, it'd be Curley or Ensley, honestly, as Tennessee's leadoff guys because they're right-handed. And I was talking to Ryan before we started the pod. If you put a left-handed bat in the leadoff spot, which to me would be Kilen or Abernathy, who you could say are just more typical leadoff guys, would be better in that role for Tennessee. That means that if it's Abernathy, then you're going to have to rotate handedness at least for the first 5 or 6. That's how Tony Vitello always does it. So that means there's a lefty now in the 3 and the 5 holes. That's probably putting Kilen in the 3, Fisher in the 5. Now you could put Kilen at leadoff and put Fisher in the 3, and it wouldn't be as big of an issue there. But I just think having a righty in the leadoff spot right now, Ryan, is best case scenario for Tennessee and how they kind of rotate the top of that order.
I mean, agree. Logistically, it just makes a lot more sense for Tennessee. But I'll even go a step further and just say like I have the trust in Dean Curley to get it going. I still feel like he's one of the best hitters on this Tennessee team. I like having one of, if not your best hitter in the leadoff spot, just to get them as many at bats as possible. And I think he's going to have a big back half of the season, or however you want to say it. And I say that like he's been bad the first half. He hasn't been bad. It's
No,
just
yeah,
he just hasn't been phenomenal. He hasn't
right.
been otherworldly or anything. So to me, it's a no brainer. Keep him there. I would not move him at all because of the logistically. But even more than that, I trust Dean Curley and think he's one of Tennessee's best bats.
Yeah, I wanted to see his OB. He's 438 on base percentage. That's still ahead of Jay, by the way. Still ahead of Reese. He's behind Ensley and Fisher, of course, who's worked a ton of walks. He's over 500 right now. But and Kilen, 546, still leads Tennessee starters. But yeah, I largely agree. I just wanted to bring that up real quick because I've seen it around. But Dean Curley right now, unless there's just multiple weekends of struggle and hitting under 200, something like that, then I think a change could be made. But right now, it feels like it's just best not to tinker. The top of Tennessee's lineup is still working really well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's not to the level that last year was, but the top of Tennessee's lineup is really, really good. I think
Mm-hmm.
you put it up against the best in the sport, and it's not giving up a whole lot. I think it's really more the back of Tennessee's lineup where you see a little bit of a drop off.
All right. Well, this weekend, Tennessee hosts Texas A&M in a 3-game series. Talk about a series that has lost its luster a lot. A College World Series final rematch, preseason number 1 in Texas A&M. You look at it before the season, it's like, all right, 2 top 5 teams, College World Series finals rematch in Knoxville. What a scene that'll be. Well, Texas A&M has 1 win in the SEC through 3 weekends and has not been a good team. And, of course, has fallen out of the rankings. And like I said, towards the bottom of the league. So a series that has lost quite a bit of luster, but Tony Vitello was asked about this last night. Is it always tougher to play a team that's record is so much worse than the talent level? And of course, that's the case with A&M. You can't take them lightly. It's still a talented team, but I think the confidence level in Tennessee winning this series, potentially sweeping, is much higher than it would have been before the season started for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, it's kind of been flipped when we've seen in recent years the team that wins the national championship has so often struggled.
Yeah.
And it's real. I mean, it's been the opposite. Tennessee has not quite picked up where they left off, but they're the unanimous number 1 team in the country, have been really, really good. And A&M is the one that's looked a lot like LSU did to start last year, and Ole Miss and Mississippi State did the 2 years prior.
Yeah. First game will be at 7 p.m. Eastern time there on Friday night. That game is on TV, ESPNU, Tennessee's 3rd televised game of the year. Game 2's on streaming services, SEC Network Plus, 6 p.m. Eastern time. And then the finale at 3 p.m. Eastern, another late Sunday finale here. E2 for that one, so another televised game, 2 of 3. Now the basketball season's over. Going to see Tennessee baseball on TV a lot more. But Ryan, before we wrap up, any final notes?
I think we've hit everything I've got. Excited to get back and watch some SEC baseball in person, and should be an exciting rest of the year. Though I gotta say, it feels like we gotta wait a little bit for the real exciting. The back last handful of series, really really
LSU and
good.
Arkansas? Yep.
LSU, Arkansas, even Vandy thrown in there late, which is always feels like a big series. These next couple, and even Auburn, I think it's one of the better home series. They got a good team, so it will be fun. And we'll see if Tennessee can keep it rolling this weekend against Texas A&M.
Yeah, those last 4, LSU, Vandy, Arkansas, and Auburn mixed in. Really good. The road series at Ole Miss will be intriguing too. They're 6-3 in the league, a solid team, but the next two home series really, A&M and Kentucky, should be more gettable ones for the Vols. If you want to follow Ryan, you can do that at rshump00. Of course, follow Rocky Top Insider on all social media platforms at Rocky Top Insider. Stay up to date with all things Tennessee athletics coverage on RockyTopInsider.com, including live at-bat by at-bat update threads for every single Tennessee baseball game. Can't watch? We got you covered. Before Ryan, I'm Jack. We'll see you next time on the Rocky Top Insider Diamond Pass.